Subscribe because it is free.
The Krorak screamed as the ship's descent burned through Earth's upper atmosphere, claws digging into the armrests. It wasn't fear of death. He'd survived acid storms and war zones. It was Earth, that cursed planet, the Death World, the graveyard of civilizations, and now the galaxy's favorite dumping ground for trash too dangerous to keep anywhere else. The dropship's automated voice didn't help. Welcome, inmate. Planetary designation: Earth. Terraforming status: abandoned. Indigenous species: hostile. Enjoy your stay. With a judder and a metallic groan, the ship landed in the ruins of what the humans had once called Metro Detroit. The ramp hissed open, revealing a cracked concrete hellscape. Rusted skyscrapers leaned at odd angles. Fires burned in oil drums. Somewhere in the distance, something howled. The Krorak stepped out, flanked by other prisoners, hardened killers, warlords, smuggler queens, and one accountant who'd skimmed too much from the wrong war fund. A voice echoed from the shadows. "Y'all new here." A man emerged, shirtless, wearing a bathrobe, combat boots, and a Viking helmet. He held a can of beer in one hand and a homemade flamethrower in the other. The Kroraks flexed his spines. "Identify yourself." "Name's Uncle Bobby," the human said, grinning through missing teeth. "Welcome to Earth. You're gonna hate it." A Thraxian assassin lunged at him, blades flashing. Bobby didn't flinch. The assassin dropped mid-air, twitching as electricity arced from the toaster-wired cattle prod he'd pulled from his bathrobe like a magician pulling rabbits. "Rule number 1, Bobby said. Don't lunge before breakfast." The inmates stared. No one moved. Then a woman in a blood-stained tank top walked up, dragging a mutant dog corpse. "Bobby, you scare the new ones again?" "Just introducing myself, tank top." She glanced at the newcomers. "Anyone here eat irradiated possum?" "No." "Guess I'll smoke it." The Kroraks had expected monsters. What he found were lunatics. Worse, organized lunatics. Over the next few days, the prisoners dispersed through the city ruins, attempting to stake out territory. That didn't last. The Virgil Syndicate tried to establish dominance by converting a ruined shopping mall into a fortress. They woke up 2 days later to find it surrounded by burning shopping carts and speakers blasting banjo music. Someone had spray-painted "Welcome to Walmart, prepare to die" across their walls. They left. The Loxian blood cult attempted to conduct a sacrifice. Bobby and his crew showed up in Halloween costumes and photobombed the ritual. The cult disbanded, humiliated. The professor appeared a week in, dragging a chalkboard through the mud. An older man with wild eyes and a permanent grin, he offered free survival tutoring. His first lesson involved turning alien handcuffs into tripwire mines. Lesson 2: How to tell edible mushrooms from ones that make you think you're an ostrich. Most prisoners avoided him after Lesson 3, which caused mild explosions in 12 people and 1 squirrel. The guards watching from orbit noticed. The first report was simple: alien aggression levels dropping. Human influence suspected. The second: inmate assimilation underway. Requesting guidance. By the third report, panic crept in. Subjects not only surviving, they are thriving. The Kroraks found himself changing, though he resisted. He had joined a hunting party for mutated boars and returned with a grill and a nickname: Steve. He hated it, but when the humans slapped his back and handed him a cold beer, something in him didn't resist as hard. He began to understand Earth's strange rules. If you wanted something, you bartered or challenged someone to shotgun roulette. Weapons were shared, loyalty was earned through shared misery, and everything was a joke until it wasn't. One evening, the Kroraks asked Bobby, "Why do you help us?" Bobby poked the fire with a stick. "Ain't helpin'. Just showing you how not to die stupid. Big difference." Another inmate, a 10-tentacled smuggler named Vike, was found playing cards with Tina. The stakes were alien credits, moonshine, and, inexplicably, a coupon for free hugs. Vike laughed so hard at one point he dislocated 2 arms. "This is madness," he said between gulps. Tina grinned. "Nah, This is Earth. Meanwhile, the guards watched the surveillance feeds. Fights were now recreational. The murder rate? Down. The cooperation rate? Alarmingly up. The Krorax was spotted teaching a Torg engineer how to rebuild a motorcycle engine. The professor held book club on Thursdays. Bobby hosted duel nights, where aliens wrestled for bragging rights and leftover beans. No one was following orders. No one feared Earth anymore. They respected it. They belonged to it. The Loxian assassin, now wearing jeans and a cowboy hat, submitted a request to open a bar. When questioned why, he replied, "The humans taught me about whiskey. I need more." Eventually, someone in orbit asked, "Should we intervene?" The answer never came. A recon drone sent to investigate disappeared. Its last transmission showed Uncle Bobby waving at the camera, holding up a sign. "Y'all don't come down now, why here?" Back on the surface, an alien mob boss named Gorak tried one last time to establish control. He declared Earth under his rule and demanded tribute from all inhabitants. Uncle Bobby responded by spray painting a smiley face on a tank and rolling it down Main Street. Gorak's base imploded under the sheer absurdity of it all. Literally. Someone had rigged his foundation with dynamite and glitter. After the explosion, Gorak limped into Bobby's camp. "I don't understand. You people don't break. You don't fight the way we expect. You laugh at pain. You worship chaos." Bobby handed him a beer. "You're startin' to get it." At night, fires crackled in barrels. Alien prisoners once feared across galaxies now sang off-key karaoke and toasted marshmallows. Cultures merged. Taboos shattered. What was once a prison became a society. A weird, unpredictable, terrifying society. And the Krorax, no, Steve, sat by the fire, staring into the flames. He no longer remembered what his mission had been. He only remembered how to weld scrap into tools and the taste of smoky meat. He'd been a monster. Now he was something worse. He was becoming human. In orbit, the last guard closed the feed. "Let's not tell HQ yet," he said quietly. "Maybe it'll sort itself out." Silence. Then the unmistakable sound of banjo music crackled over the comms. It began with a blueprint. A crumpled napkin, scrawled in motor oil and coffee, passed between a tentacled smuggler, a deranged ex-engineer from a Venus mining colony, and Tina, who once disassembled a plasma rifle to fix a vending machine. They called it the peace engine, though no one could agree if it was a generator, a bomb, or a jukebox. Whatever it was, it worked. The ruins of Detroit, once lawless and charred, now had power. Not steady, not safe. Some lights flickered purple and one tower hummed like it was haunted, but it was civilization. Sort of. Then came the chickens. No one knew who brought them. One morning, a coop stood outside the old courthouse. The birds clucked like they owned the place. By noon, there was an egg-based economy. Steve, the Krorax who'd once burned planets, now bartered 3 eggs for a jar of pickles and a wrench with only minor rust. He even built a fence, with a sign that read, "Steve stuff, no touchy." It wasn't order. Not really. It was something more dangerous. Culture. The inmates, aliens, monsters, war criminals, all began to adapt. They weren't becoming human in body, but in spirit. The signs were everywhere. A Rilgorian death brood installed a disco ball in their bunker. The Loxian bar served cocktails with tiny umbrellas and exactly 1 peanut per drink. Tina ran a radio station out of a gutted SUV, playing ancient Earth music and shouting survival tips between Metallica and Taylor Swift. The guards above were losing it. "This isn't correctional behavior," a fleet commander barked, his tendrils twitching. "This is innovation. Should we deploy suppression drones?" "No. That planet eats drones." Still, they tried. They sent down a scout team of 3, the best-trained, hardest bastards the Galactic Penal Authority had. Only one returned. He arrived pantsless and singing country music in an accent no one recognized. He'd been given the nickname Trucker Dave, and now insisted Earth was his true home. When pressed for intel, all he said was, "Y'all got no idea what biscuits do to a man's soul." The fleet quietly struck him from the manifest. Meanwhile, back on Earth, Bobby had grown something of a council. Unofficial, disorganized, and mostly intoxicated. But it functioned. When disputes arose, they settled them with feats of absurd skill. Spork duels, mud poetry, interpretive dance combat. No one questioned the outcomes. You couldn't argue with a six-armed assassin who just did the worm in radioactive sludge while quoting Shakespeare. The professor insisted this was inevitable. Humans don't conquer with strength. They infect with chaos. Memes are viral. Jokes are weapons. Banter is their camouflage. Once you laugh, you're compromised. Steve didn't laugh. Not yet. But he smirked more often. He also stopped sleeping in shifts. He built a shack. He fixed the plumbing, sort of. There were now showers, provided you didn't mind the water sometimes smelling like burnt fish or temporary invisibility. A new inmate drop came 3 weeks later. These ones were different, armored, cocky, elite. The Gorgle Marauders. Known for raising colonies and eating their own weak. They expected fear. What they got was a welcome party. Fireworks. Cooked meat. Someone playing a banjo-flute hybrid while wearing a panda costume. The Marauders attacked. Within minutes, 3 were in headlocks, 1 was weeping from laughter, and their leader had joined Bobby in a chili cook-off. They lost. Humans didn't just fight dirty. They fought weird. Bobby later explained it over drinks. They show up expecting blood and pain. We give beans and dance-offs. Confuses the hell out of him. And if they still fight? Asked a former mob enforcer now growing hydroponic turnips. Then we use the flamethrower. There was always a flamethrower. The humans didn't control Earth. No one did. But they warped it, like gravity-bending light. Cultures collided, mutated, and came out stranger. Stronger. Funnier. And somehow, safer. A criminal named Zorvok once led an entire asteroid cartel. Now he knitted scarves and yelled at people for tracking mud into his mushroom lab. He claimed it calmed his urge to vaporize. Color therapy, he muttered, clicking his needles. Pearl Stitch keeps the murder down. Another alien opened a noodle stand. He had no idea what noodles were but had tasted them once and declared them divine. He used worms, mostly. Didn't matter. It had a line. The inmates began calling it the change. No one could define it. You just woke up one day and found yourself fixing a roof with someone you once stabbed. Or dancing in a storm because Tina's radio dared you. Or naming your laser rifle, Cuddles. Steve resisted, still. But each day it got harder. He laughed once, by accident. Someone slipped on a mutant banana and squeaked like a broken clarinet. It haunted him. The memory. The joy. He tried to stay serious. Stoic. Alien. Then he got drunk and arm wrestled a bear. 1, 2. It was stuffed, but still. He woke up with glitter on his spines and a tattoo that read, "N.O. Ragrets." The guards in orbit were in full crisis mode. They're not just adapting, one hissed. They're building. They're cooperating. They're humaning. A pause. Is that a word? It is now. One final report was drafted. Subject: Earth. Status: uncontainable. Recommendation: abandon. Do not engage. Do not look directly at them. Reason: psychological contagion. Terminal humanity exposure. Cultural memes beyond control. Symptoms: sarcasm. Forgiveness. Barbecue. By the time the fleet decided to leave Earth to its own devices, Earth no longer cared. The aliens didn't try to escape. Why would they? They had beer. They had songs. They had inside jokes and a shared history of surviving radioactive snowstorms and Bobby's chili. They weren't prisoners anymore. They were locals. And Earth. Earth was no longer a prison. It was home. Steve watched the horizon burn again. Not with war, but with sunrise. He stood atop a half-collapsed tower-turned-windmill, tools dangling from his belt, chicken under one arm, and a mug of something that claimed to be coffee but tasted suspiciously like regret. Around him, Earth hummed with its new, violent rhythm. Someone below was testing a rocket made from water heaters and bad decisions. It was Monday. "Nice morning," said Tina, swinging up beside him on a rope that had no business holding her weight. "It smells like flaming tires and ozone," Steve grunted. "Exactly. Nice morning." Down in the rebuilt courtyard, the community was alive. Not peaceful, no, never that, but functional. The noodle worm stand had expanded. The assassin bar had themed trivia nights. Uncle Bobby had converted an old bus into a traveling circus with exactly 3 acts: knife juggling, mutant ferret wrestling, and himself shouting conspiracy theories in rhyme. No one had died in 2 weeks. A new record. But Steve felt something off. Not fear. Not tension. Anticipation. He wasn't the only one. The professor had begun painting again. Not walls, people. Mostly unwilling. He called it camouflage theory, and claimed that blending in required emotional pigments. It made no sense. That meant it was probably genius. Meanwhile, a group of former warlords held secret meetings about formalizing town rules. This included the controversial debate over whether hot sauce theft warranted exile or community chili duty. No one noticed the sky until it blinked. Then twitched. Stars vanished. Not slowly. Just gone. Someone looked up and said, "Huh." Then the comms tower fried itself. Then everything stopped. Lights. Radios. Music. Even the ever-buzzing neon sign at Tina's bar that read, "Still open, unfortunately." They came in silence. Ships. Not dropships. Not patrol craft. Warships. The kind built not to enforce, but erase. The Galactic Authority had returned. Except this time, they weren't here to monitor. They were here to end it. A broadcast crackled to life across all surviving screens. A face. Pale. Smooth. Sterile. Authority Commander Drelv. Half machine. All ego. "This experiment has failed," he declared. "The planet is to be purged. Contamination too deep. Rehabilitation. Impossible. Psychological infection risk. Extreme. Evacuation of fleet personnel. Already complete. Termination in T-12 Earth hours. No threats. No demands. Just cold math." The message ended. Silence returned. Then someone farted. Loudly. And Tina burst into laughter. That broke it. Within an hour, the council, if you could call it that, gathered. Steve, Tina, Bobby, the professor, Vike, 2 sentient mold colonies in a trench coat, and Zorvok the knitting terror. Bobby slammed his beer down. "So, they wanna wipe us. Again." Steve crossed his arms. "We can't win a war against a fleet." "Of course not," the professor said. "But we don't have to win a war. We just have to win Earth." "What the hell does that mean?" Zorvok asked, unraveling a scarf in stress. The professor tapped his head. "They expect us to riot, to panic, to fracture. They expect prisoners. Animals. But we're not prisoners anymore. We're ferret wrestlers and feral cooks," Tina added. "Exactly. We're unpredictable. Which means we're dangerous." Uncle Bobby grinned. "Let's confuse the living hell out of him." They did. 12 hours is a long time when you don't sleep, don't care about OSHA, and own 17 barrels of fireworks marked "use only in event of severe boredom." First, they turned the power grid into a signal amplifier. The message they sent? Bring snacks. It's gonna get weird. Next, they rigged rooftops with disco lights, hacked drones to scream Shakespeare quotes, and taught the mold colonies how to sing sea shanties. And then, they weaponized culture. Literally. Every weird thing Earth had ever been infected with. Cheesy movies, outdated memes, folk dances, conspiracy boards, thrift shop outfits, was deployed like psychological napalm. When the Galactic Authority fleet dropped its first strike pod, it landed in a suburb painted entirely with clown graffiti and lined with animatronic penguins playing polka. The strike team inside didn't even disembark. They took one look, sealed the hatch, and called for extraction. The second team landed near Bobby's circus bus. They lasted longer. Exactly 12 minutes. Then they were swarmed by friendly locals offering pickled eggs and arguing about whether pants were a societal construct. One of the soldiers shot his own comms relay just to stop the confusion. Steve led the third counter-effort. He wore a tuxedo vest, a welding mask, and carried 2 leaf blowers retrofitted with what the professor only called Plan B. They sprayed glitter, mustard gas, and polka music at 300 decibels. 2 enemy mechs fled the scene. Within hours, the fleet's commander was screaming, "They've turned madness into a weapon. They're jamming comms with karaoke. Our AI can't parse their tactics. It thinks they're performance art." Back on Earth, Tina handed out, "I survived the apocalypse and all I got was this lousy shirt, t-shirts." Steve didn't smile. He grinned. Because now it wasn't just survival. It was payback. The Authority had tried to break them. Instead, it had forged a new kind of creature, human in spirit, alien in form, completely ungovernable. You couldn't dominate people who danced into death, who laughed under missile fire, who painted graffiti on their own tombstones just to leave a punchline behind. The final wave came fast, low orbit strike. But Earth had one last surprise. The peace engine. Nobody knew how it worked, or why it worked. They just knew the moment it activated, the sky lit up. And not with lasers. With fireworks. Real, honest fireworks, made from scrap and powdered insanity. It pulsed a signal into orbit so complex, so bizarre, that the galactic authority systems crashed trying to decode it. It said, "You're not welcome here. We already broke the rules. Now we are the rules." The fleet hesitated. Just long enough for Earth's scavenged orbital railgun, long dormant, rebuilt by drunk aliens and a raccoon named Gerald, to fire. One ship gone. The others blinked. Turned. Fled. Just like that, Earth won. Not with might. With madness. The survivors gathered as the ships vanished. Steve stood atop the windmill again, chicken still under one arm, coffee replaced with beer. Tina raised her glass. To Earth. The prison that imprisoned its wardens. Uncle Bobby belched. To chaos. Steve said nothing. But he knew the truth now. The planet hadn't changed them. It had revealed them. And whatever they were now, was far more dangerous than before. Steve built a mailbox. That, more than anything, signified the end of the war. It stood crooked, half-welded, spray-painted bright pink with Steve's Hope Deposit Box, scrawled on it in 5 languages. None spelled right. But it was real. Permanent. Beside it, the ruins of the prison tower were now a bakery/ammo shop run by a lizard named Click. The air smelled like cinnamon and gun oil. No one questioned it. The Galactic Authority never came back. Not officially. A lone probe passed by 6 days after the failed extermination attempt. It drifted over the planet, blinking, scanning, recording. It saw a wedding between 2 former bounty hunters, officiated by a sentient tire. It saw mutant goats with names and sweaters. It saw a school built from old storage containers, where the professor taught ethics using bar brawls as case studies. The probe sent one word back, contaminated. And then it self-destructed. No one was sad. Steve stood at the center of the community. Not a town, not a village, just a tangle of life held together with duct tape, jokes, and shared trauma. Tina had turned the old radio SUV into a community hub. Music still blasted at odd hours. Announcements included things like, "Don't eat the blue mushrooms," and "Tonight's movie is Die Hard," mandatory attendance. Zorvok taught knitting to troubled teens, his only rule, no stabbing unless it's with needles. The mold colonies joined the school board. And Bobby ran for mayor. Technically, no one voted for him. But he declared himself mayor anyway and handed out buttons that said, "I didn't vote for Bobby, and all I got was represented." He was surprisingly effective. One week, he negotiated a peace treaty between a gang of cybernetic ex-warlords and a choir of talking birds. It involved karaoke and salsa. "Don't ask questions," he told Steve. "Just enjoy the music." Steve tried. He had changed. Once a living weapon, now he caught himself fixing roofs, scolding teenagers, and reading bedtime stories to small alien creatures with too many eyes and an inexplicable love of Winnie the Pooh. He still carried a knife, but mostly for peeling fruit. Late one night, while patching up the northern wall with bits of spaceship hull, he found himself sitting on the edge of a scaffold, watching the stars blink against the atmosphere. Tina joined him, holding 2 beers and a suspiciously glowing cupcake. "Remember when we all hated each other?" she asked, handing him one. He grunted. "We still do. We just also share dessert now." She laughed. "What do you think happened to us?" Steve took a long swig. "I think we stopped trying to survive and started trying to live." They sat in silence for a while. Somewhere, distant laughter rang out, probably Bobby yelling about taxes again. Then Tina asked, "You think they'll ever try again?" "The authority." Steve's eyes narrowed at the stars. "If they're smart." "No. But they're bureaucrats. Bureaucrats always come back." "But this time we'll be ready?" "No," he cracked a smile. "This time, they'll be the ones unprepared." The professor, listening from his hidden perch atop the satellite dish tower, scribbled something into a thick, grease-stained notebook. He titled the page, "The Earth Phenomenon, When You Try to Break Humans, They Build a Pub Instead." He paused, then added, "Symptoms include humor under duress, irrational loyalty, recreational explosives, and dangerously high levels of sarcasm." Down below, preparations for the Earthiversary began. It had been exactly 1 Earth year since the Authority tried to wipe them out. The party planning committee, made up entirely of criminals, cooks, and 1 reformed AI, had declared a week-long celebration mandatory. Events included dance-offs of diplomacy, story time with Steve, he hated it, pie-eating contests judged by spiders, and a screening of every Fast and Furious movie back-to-back. Even the carnivorous plants were decorated. Bobby rode in on a mutant yak, covered in streamers. "People of Earth, not Earth," he declared. "We have defied extinction. And more importantly, we have perfected chili." There was applause. And mild panic. Because last time, Bobby's chili caused spontaneous hair growth in the unlikeliest places. Steve watched it all, hands in his pockets, blade tucked away. He didn't speak much anymore. Didn't need to. His presence was enough. He was part of the myth now. The alien warlord who learned to laugh. The blade who learned to build. The enemy who stayed and protected. That night, the kids put on a play. Uncle Bobby narrated. Tina ran lights. The professor wept openly. The story. The history of the prison planet. From the first drop, to the first campfire, to the first egg sold for 2 bullets and a chocolate bar. Steve had a cameo. Played by a cardboard cutout with pipe cleaners for arms. He didn't complain. At the end, one of the children, an 8-eyed scamp with Steve's old helmet, looked up at the stars and shouted, "If you come back, we'll bake you into a pie." It got a standing ovation. The next day, a tiny probe from some backwater star system entered orbit. It sent a signal down. Translation: requesting asylum. "Heard you have good noodles." Steve looked at the others. They all looked back. Then he said the most human thing he'd ever said. "Tell them to bring their own bowl." And just like that, Earth grew again. Not a prison. Not a colony. Not even a rebellion. Something else. Something new. A crucible of madness, grit, kindness, and terrifying adaptability. A place where the worst were sent, and somehow, became better. Or at least weirder. The galaxy watched from afar now. Some called Earth cursed. Others called it dangerous. But a few, the brave ones, whispered the truth. Earth wasn't cursed. It was contagious. And it had already started to spread.